Arthur Hale had grown used to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the sort that wraps around a person at dawn or settles over a quiet winter night. No, this was a heavier silence, the kind that seems to sit on your shoulders and seep into the walls of a home once filled with laughter. He felt it every morning when he woke up. He felt it when he boiled water for his tea. He felt it, especially when he crossed the hallway and his eyes fell on the old grandfather clock, tall, sturdy, beautifully carved with oak leaves, a Hale family heirloom for 4 generations, and yet silent. Its brass pendulum hung perfectly still, like a captured moment in time. The hands pointed to one exact moment, a moment burned into Arthur's heart forever. 3:17. The time Margaret left him. That was 18 years ago. And still, the clock had not ticked a single second since. It had simply stopped, the very moment she breathed her last, as if the house itself, knew love, had slipped away. Arthur never tried to fix it, never allowed anyone to touch it, never dusted it unless Lucy nagged him enough. To him, it wasn't broken. It was a memory, a frozen reminder of the woman who had known his soul better than he knew it himself. A house filled with echoes. Arthur shuffled toward the kitchen, leaning slightly on his cane. His knees weren't what they used to be, but he still moved with a kind of old-fashioned dignity. On the small table by the window sat a vase of wilted roses, Margaret's favorite flower. He replaced them every week, even though no one visited often enough to notice. He placed a tea bag into his mug, poured hot water, and sat at the table, watching the steam swirl into the morning air. He wasn't lonely, at least that's what he told himself. Lucy visited every Sunday with Daniel. Mrs. Whitmore brought him soup now and then. The mailman still asked about his health. But between these visits, his days stretched long and quiet, and the silence mostly stayed with him, like a companion he never invited. Still, Arthur found comfort in routine. At 7:10 a.m., he opened the curtains. At 7:30, he had tea. At 8 o'clock, he walked to the living room and stared at the old grandfather clock. He didn't mean to, he didn't plan it. It was the clock that drew him in. Every single morning, like it held a secret. A visit from Lucy. Around noon, the front door opened. "Dad, you home?" Arthur smiled faintly. "Where else would I be?" Lucy stepped inside, holding 2 grocery bags. Her hair light brown, like Margaret's was, tied into a neat ponytail, and her jacket still had raindrops on it. "It's raining again?" Arthur asked. "Only lightly," Lucy said, carrying the groceries to the counter. "Thought I'd drop by with a few things. Daniel's at practice, so I had some time." Arthur nodded and watched her fuss around the kitchen. She moved with purpose, something she'd inherited from Margaret. Always doing, always thinking, always caring. "How's Daniel?" Arthur asked. "Growing too fast and eating like a bear," she smiled. "He says he wants to come by tomorrow. Something about helping you sort old photo albums." Arthur's chest tightened with warmth. Daniel was a good boy, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of grandson any man would be proud of. "That would be nice," he said softly. Lucy finished arranging things and walked into the living room. As expected, her eyes went straight to the clock. "Dad," she began, a gentle warning in her voice. "No," Arthur said, before she could continue. "You don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to say we should get it fixed." Lucy sighed. "It's been 18 years, Dad." "Exactly," Arthur said, "and that's why it stays as it is." Lucy approached him and took his hand. "It's just a clock. It doesn't have to represent, it's not just a clock." Lucy paused. "I know it stopped when she passed, but leaving it like this, Lucy," Arthur whispered, "this is the last thing in this house that still feels connected to her. It doesn't have to be." Arthur swallowed. "Maybe not for you, but for me, it is." Lucy didn't argue further. She simply squeezed his hand and sat with him for a few minutes before leaving. When the door closed, Arthur exhaled deeply. He turned to the clock. Its face stared back at him, silent, still waiting. Memories that hurt and heal. That night, Arthur sat in his armchair, old photo albums stacked on his lap. He flipped through the pages. each one filled with memories of the life he built with Margaret. Young Arthur and Margaret on their wedding day. Margaret holding newborn Lucy. Family trips, picnics, holidays, smiles that reached the eyes. He paused on a picture of Margaret in her garden, her favorite place, her sanctuary. In the photo, she was kneeling among rose bushes, sunlight caught in her hair, looking up at Arthur with that same gentle smile he still dreamed about. He traced her image with trembling fingers. Sometimes he forgot the sound of her voice, but he never forgot her smile. It lived inside him still. As he closed the album, his eyes drifted again to the clock. "Why did you stop?" he whispered. "Was it your way of telling me she was gone?" He didn't know, but he did know this. Every day since Margaret's passing, Arthur felt like time had moved forward without him. Like the world kept turning while he stayed locked in the moment he lost her. And staring at that clock was almost like staring at his own heart, stuck, unmoving, afraid to start again. The letter he never sent. During the quiet hours of the night, Arthur opened the drawer of his bedside table. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed with age, edges brittle. His handwriting faded, but still readable. "To my beloved Margaret, if I never get to say this." He wrote it the night before her surgery she never woke up from. He meant to give it to her. He never did. It held everything he never had the courage to say. How she changed him, how she saved him, how she made his ordinary life extraordinary, how losing her broke him in ways even he didn't understand. He opened the letter gently, as though it might crumble. He read it slowly, tears burning behind his eyes. When he finished, he placed it back in the envelope and closed the drawer. Maybe someday he would let it go, but not tonight. Tonight, he let the memories wash over him like an old melody he still remembered every note of, a night of restless dreams. Arthur didn't sleep well. He dreamt of Margaret standing in the hallway beside the silent clock. She wasn't sad, she wasn't angry, she was simply there, smiling, warm, familiar, comforting. "Arthur," she said softly, "you have held on for too long." "I don't know how to stop," he whispered. "Yes, you do." She touched the clock, and for a moment he swore he heard ticking, but he woke up before he could ask her what she meant. The dream left him shaken. He dressed slowly the next morning, made tea, and walked to the living room. The clock stood exactly as it always had, silent, still, frozen at 3:17. A rainy afternoon visit. It was close to noon when someone knocked on the door. Mrs. Whitmore, his neighbor, stood on the porch holding a tray of warm bread. "Thought you might like some company," she said with a soft smile. Arthur stepped aside. "Come in, please." She glanced around the household photographs, familiar furniture, a few cobwebs he hadn't noticed. Her eyes paused at the clock. "That old thing still stopped." Arthur nodded. "It stopped when Margaret," he swallowed. "You remember?" "I do," Mrs. Whitmore said gently. "She was a good woman, the best." They ate bread and talked for a while, about the weather, about Daniel's school, about Mrs. Whitmore's grandkids. But eventually, the conversation softened, quieted, and Mrs. Whitmore looked at Arthur with kind, worried eyes. "You know, Arthur, sometimes holding on to the past keeps us from enjoying the years we still have left." He gave a sad smile. "I know, do you?" He hesitated. "I'm trying." She placed her hand over his. "That's all anyone can do. Bro, here's your gentle emotional donation moment. And to anyone listening to this story, if these quiet moments touch your heart, if Arthur's journey reminds you of someone you loved, your small support can help us keep making stories like this. Our PayPal link is in the description, and even the smallest gesture means the world to us. Thank you for being here tonight. Back to story. Daniel's curiosity. Around 4 p.m., Daniel arrived. "Grandpa." Arthur's heart warmed instantly. Daniel hugged him, then looked around. "Mom said we're going to go through old photo albums." "In a bit," Arthur said. "First, let me show you something." He led Daniel to the grandfather clock. "It's really old," Daniel whispered. "Like, older than Mom." "Older than both of us," Arthur chuckled. "Your great-great-grandfather built it. Why doesn't it work?" Arthur took a breath, deep, steady. It stopped when your grandmother passed away. Daniel's eyes softened. Oh, I didn't know that. Arthur nodded. It just froze, and I suppose I froze a little too. Daniel stepped closer. Grandpa, do you want it to work again? The question hit Arthur harder than he expected. I don't know. I could try to help, Daniel said. Not to fix it, but maybe to understand it. Arthur looked at the boy so young, yet so thoughtful. Maybe, Arthur whispered, that time hasn't come yet. Daniel didn't push, didn't pry. He simply nodded and said, when you're ready, Grandpa, I'll be right here. A strange feeling. That night, Arthur sat alone again, the house quiet as always. But something felt different. He didn't know what, couldn't place it. The clock seemed heavier, not physically, emotionally, like it was holding a truth he hadn't uncovered yet. He approached it slowly, placed his hand on the cold wooden frame. I miss you, Margaret, he whispered. I still don't know how to move forward. The silence inside the clock felt almost alive, like it was listening. Arthur closed his eyes, and for a split second he thought he heard something, a faint something, not ticking, not movement, just a soft breath of possibility. But when he opened his eyes, nothing, still silent, still 3:17, still frozen. But Arthur was beginning to thaw, the time that waited for him. The next morning, Arthur woke earlier than usual, not because of pain in his knees or a call from the nurse, but because something inside him felt lighter. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the dream. Maybe it was the way the old clock's stillness felt less suffocating now. Or maybe it was simply time. He sat up slowly, rubbing his palms over his face. And then something strange happened. Without really knowing why, Arthur whispered, "Good morning, Lillian." The words left him naturally, gently, without the usual ache. There was still sadness, yes, but not the sharp, unbearable kind. This one felt like a soft memory resting on his chest. He breathed in, held it, and exhaled, slowly. Maybe today, he whispered, I'll try something new, breaking routine. When he stepped out into the hallway, Grace nearly dropped her clipboard. Well, look at that smile, she teased. Did someone win the lottery? Arthur chuckled, an easy, honest laugh that surprised even him. No lottery, he said, just a good night. Grace leaned closer. You look different today, lighter somehow. Arthur shrugged. Maybe I slept well. But Grace wasn't fooled. She sensed something. She had seen many seniors change overnight, after dreams, after confessions, after moments of quiet realization. Whatever happened, she said softly, I'm glad. Arthur nodded. He was glad too. An invitation he didn't expect. Later that afternoon, Emma stopped by his room. She carried 2 mugs of tea, steam lifting in slow ribbons. Thought you might like some company, she said. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Since when do you deliver tea? Emma smirked. Since Grace told me you smiled today. That's breaking news. He laughed again, truly laughed, and the sound eased something inside him. They talked for over an hour, about nothing and everything, about the weather, about the old willow tree, about life. Eventually, Emma's voice grew gentle. So, did you look at the clock again? Arthur nodded. It's still stuck at 3:17, same as always. Emma set her cup down. And how did that make you feel today? He paused. Then he said something he never thought he'd say. It didn't hurt as much. Emma smiled, not the casual kind she gave everyone, but the quiet, proud kind she reserved for moments that mattered. That's progress, she whispered. Arthur stared at the old clock. Yes, he said, I think it is. A walk to the garden. A few days passed, each one softer than the last. Arthur found himself walking more with his cane, carefully but purposefully. He wandered through the home's small garden, stopping at the rose bushes. Lillian had loved roses, especially the pale pink ones. He stood there a long while, breathing in the scent. Do you remember, he murmured aloud, how you used to say roses have patience, that they bloom only when they're ready? He reached out, gently touching a petal. Maybe I needed that too. For the first time in years, he didn't cry at the thought of her. He simply remembered, and the memory warmed him instead of crushing him. The conversation he avoided for years. One evening, Arthur visited Mr. Patel in the library. The old man was polishing his glasses. Surrounded by books, he pretended to read, but mostly admired. "Arthur," he said, looking up. "What brings you here?" Arthur hesitated. "I want to talk." Mr. Patel nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting this moment all along. And so Arthur told him everything. About Lillian. About the day she died. About the 3:17 clock. About the dreams. About the strange peace beginning to grow inside him. Mr. Patel listened without interrupting, his expression gentle and wise. When Arthur finished, the old man leaned back in his chair. "You loved her deeply," he said, "and you still do." "That's clear," Arthur swallowed. "I just don't know how to live without her." Mr. Patel tapped his cane lightly on the floor. "You aren't living without her," he said softly. "You are living with her, in your memories, your habits, your thoughts. Love doesn't vanish, it transforms." Arthur blinked. "Transforms?" "Yes," Mr. Patel said, "into something you carry with you instead of something that weighs you down." Arthur sat quietly, absorbing the words. "Do you think," he whispered, "that if I let go of the pain, it means I'm forgetting her?" Mr. Patel smiled. "No," he said. "Letting go of pain is not forgetting. It is remembering with peace instead of grief." Arthur felt his throat tighten. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be ready," Mr. Patel replied. "You only have to be honest with what your heart is telling you." Arthur nodded slowly. For the first time, he realized something. He didn't want to forget Lillian. He just wanted to stop hurting. The day of the revelation. A week later, Arthur woke to a particularly quiet morning. He sat up, stretched his hands, and felt something strange. A sense of stillness, but not the sad kind. A calm, steady, quiet, like the world was holding its breath. He reached for his glasses, put them on, and looked at the old family clock, still frozen at 3:17. He stared at it for a very long moment, and then, with a deep breath, he whispered, "I think I'm ready now, Lil." It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't forgetting. It was acceptance. Soft, gentle acceptance. The letter he had never opened. That afternoon, Grace knocked on his door, holding a faded white envelope. "Arthur, this belongs to you," he frowned. "What is that?" Grace handed it to him carefully. The ink was slightly smudged, the edges worn. "It was tucked behind a drawer in the old storage room," she said. "Your daughter Emma was clearing things out and found it. Looks like it's from Lillian." Lillian. Arthur froze. His hands shook as he took the letter. The envelope was addressed in his wife's handwriting, that rounded, warm script he knew by heart. He swallowed hard. "Thank you." Grace left quietly. Arthur sat down. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He opened it slowly, and there she was, Lillian's voice, Lillian's heart, Lillian's gentle truth. The letter read, "My dearest Arthur, if you are reading this, then life must have moved ahead in ways we cannot predict. I want you to know something important, something I may not get the chance to say as often as I should. You have loved me fiercely, beautifully, completely, and I have been grateful every day. But promise me one thing. Do not stop living when I'm gone. Don't freeze your heart at the same moment mine stops beating. Time is a gift. Keep living, keep loving, keep smiling, and when you feel ready, let me go with peace, not sorrow. Always yours, Lillian." Arthur read the letter 3 times before the tears fell. Not the shattered kind, not grief's violent break, but soft, warm, cleansing tears, tears of release. He pressed the letter to his chest. "Oh, Lil," he whispered, "you always knew, the moment it happened." That evening, Arthur sat alone in his room, the letter resting beside him. He looked at the clock, frozen at 3:17. He stood, walked toward it, and placed his hand gently on the glass. "I'm not letting go of you," he whispered. "I'm letting go of the pain." His eyes softened, and then, just as he turned away, tick, Arthur's breath caught. He turned back, slowly. Tick, the second hand moved, then the minute hand, then the hour hand. The clock silent, since Lillian's last breath, began to tick again. Arthur pressed a hand over his mouth, overwhelmed. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't confused. He understood. He finally understood. "Thank you," he whispered. For the first time since losing her, he felt whole. Not because the pain was gone, but because the love now felt gentle again. As the days passed, Arthur kept living, really living. He walked in the garden. He laughed more. He talked to the others. He shared stories of Lillian without breaking. He wasn't moving on. He was moving forward. Love hadn't left him. It had simply changed shape. And he learned something important, something he wished someone had told him long ago. Time doesn't heal everything, but acceptance. Acceptance makes room for healing. And that's when time begins to move again. Sometimes, literally. And dear listener, if this story touched your heart even a little, and if you'd like to support us so we can keep making peaceful bedtime stories for seniors, you can gently donate through the PayPal link in the description. Your kindness helps us keep this channel alive, and it honestly means the world to us. Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed The Clock That Stopped at 3:17, please subscribe and join our warm little family of listeners. Press the like button, leave a comment, and tell us which moment touched you the most. We'll be here every night, sharing stories that gently remind us that love, memory, and time are beautifully connected. Good night, dear friend.